Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar series, where we will cover Minerva Intelligence. The company is listed on the TSXV under the symbol MVAI. My name is Corey Cohen of Virtus Advisory, and I am joined today by the CEO of Minerva Intelligence, Mr. Scott Tillman. We will take approximately 20 minutes to walk through the investor presentation and then open the floor for questions. Should you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to send them in using the Zoom Q&A function found in the bottom of your screen, and we will make sure to get to them at the end of the presentation. If you have dialed in by phone and have a question, please send us your question by emailing us at info@virtusadvisory.com. With that, I will hand the call over to Mr. Scott Tillman, the CEO of Minerva.
Thank you very much, Corey, and thank you everyone who is joining us today. As Corey mentioned, my name is Scott Tillman, and I'm the CEO of Minerva Intelligence. We develop AI within reason is what we like to think of. Here's the formalities that we have to go through. Before diving into who we are and what we're doing, I wanted to just give you guys a bit of background on the company and myself. I come from the hedge fund industry at a distressed debt hedge fund. Left that industry and moved into doing a variety of entrepreneurial activities that have run the gamut from data centers to board positions and other technology related companies. The company's history is a pretty interesting one in that our two co-founders come from very diverse backgrounds. One is a professional geologist who worked for Anglo for quite a long time. And in the early 80s, he was tapped to go to get his computer science degree because the amount of data that was being generated was explosive at that point, which is a little bit cute to think of in today's context. But nonetheless, they had all of a sudden an explosion of satellite data and multi-element data. And they tapped him to go and get a degree to help them figure out what to do with all this data. He quickly realized that it was an incredible challenge, and the compute power of the 1980s was just not up to the task of being able to solve some of those problems. So he continued on with Anglo for some 20 years and ultimately decided to move to Vancouver. And that is where he befriended and met our other co-founder, Professor David Poole, who is a very well-known professor of artificial intelligence and robotics at the University of British Columbia. The two of them basically got to talking about how to solve some of these problems, and that is basically the origin story of our company. We were funded about 2 years ago and went public about a year later, and have sought to build out our product set. And that is kind of the history, which I think is informative of where we are today and where we hope to take things. So what we're doing, though, is we are building AI solutions that decision makers can trust. And we focus on increasing the ability to understand what the results are that a computer is telling you. So that means that we are designing explainable AI. We can deal with small data sets as well as large data sets. So we don't have some of the inherent problems that neural networks have in that they need massive amounts of data. We offer custom and pre-built solutions, and to date, we have validated ourselves in 2 fields, but we think that there are a number of fields where our approach is applicable. We're based in Vancouver, Canada, and we've got a number of talented engineers, software developers, geospatial analysts, as well as consultants who help as our domain experts and a number of academic advisors. Real quickly, and I'm going to encourage people to kind of go back to this because there's quite a bit here, and I'm not going to go through every line, but AI is a broad spectrum. I think most people think primarily of machine learning and neural networks, which offers some fantastic results, and I think we all see it every day, be it using a Google Photos or the optimization and recommendations on a Netflix. There's no denying that it's out there. There are neural networks, there's speech, there's optimization, there's robotics. All of these are fantastic things, but we are very much within the cognitive space. which means that we're kind of dealing with knowledge top down. And the areas where we try to pursue are areas where mistakes and explanations matter. Google Photos, if they mess up a picture of your son or daughter, the consequences are very low. If you give data to an engineer that results in mistakes being made, the stakes are very high. So we think that cognitive AI is a tool that can be used within that larger tool belt of AI. We don't think any one on its own is going to solve some of the problems that people are hoping to solve over the long term. And that is kind of where we sit within that world. And in cognitive AI, what we do is we create conceptual models. And these are generally going to be done by experts. And we base these models on what are known as ontologies, but effectively it's just a way of dealing with all of the language and creating a hierarchical structure so that we actually can deal with parts of things and how the words actually work, as opposed to dealing with equations that give us an output of something between 0 and 1. And then what we can do is take these models and compare them to other models as well as to instances. And an instance is effectively a piece of data. It could be a mine, it could be a drill hole, it could be a weather event, it could be the amount of rain that has fallen, it could be any number of different things. We believe that, as I said, that there's many important parts of AI, but we think that cognitive AI is going to be especially important. Things like driving a autonomous vehicle are not quite as simple when you start getting to the very, very last details that are incredibly important. Was that a plastic bag that rolled across the street, or was that a child that rolled across the street? The stakes are extraordinarily high, and we think cognitive AI has a very large role to play. This slide I'll just gloss over, but I think we all know that there's expectations that the amount of money that will be spent on artificial intelligence is looking to go through the roof over the next couple of years, compounding at 30+% a year. We think that there are a number of tools that will be successful in this market, and we are positioning ourselves to be one of those. When you start drilling down into how you deal with cognitive AI and developing systems that we think users can trust, this slide I think helps to represent how that all works. We first look to basically position ourselves as knowledge engineers using graph technology to represent the knowledge of a specific domain, and so that's creating some of those models that we spoke about. We drive that further with the models by doing knowledge capture, which starts to bring in some of the information so that we can input it into the system. A key part of our process is that, and really with all AI, is that data alignment and standardization is extraordinarily important to us. We very much have garbage in, garbage out problems if we can't rely on the data. And until we get a look at the data, it can be either clean or a mess. But in any case, we need that data to be aligned for us. And then we're able to reason with the data, which is where things get pretty exciting, in that we are able to use those models and compare them to the instances. And without large training sets, because the model was built by an expert as opposed to having to train itself, we can get outputs that are very robust. And then this allows for all sorts of different outcomes depending on what sort of application, but you've now got new insights into things. You've got fully explained results, and you don't just have an X on a map or a yes or a no. This slide tries to talk a little bit about our special sauce, which is what we call the reasoner. And that is the software that basically takes all of these different data points and models and creates ranked outputs. And again, the highlight here is that anything that is computed by our reasoner is going to give you something that's explainable as well as auditable. You'll be able to actually look at the answer and drill down into why that answer was provided, and that answer will be provided in plain language that we can all understand. It understands, again, the types of knowledge that are out there based on the models. And We seek to offer those products right now basically through custom solutions, which largely uses a bunch of tools that we have built in order to sell some of our more software-oriented products. I would call this professional services or consulting type revenue that largely helps to bring customers in the door. This would run the gamut from dealing with the data organization to helping to create the models and ontologies that they would use in order to ultimately use some of our software-oriented products. And the software-oriented products are primarily going to be SaaS, as well as some that rely on the consulting products to be able to render the results. I'll dive into what some of those are in the next couple of slides. We have currently two separate verticals. We are commercializing products within economic geology, and we are commercializing products within what we call natural hazards. So that would be dealing with landslides, floods, soon to be fires, and other events like that. Within our geology, we have Solace, which is basically the workflow, or again, kind of the professional services part of our solution, which will deal with the client data and help to align it so that we can then use it in our software. Leo is basically, I'd like to think of it as a document management system on steroids. And it is imbued with the domain-specific knowledge structure to allow for extraordinarily robust search. It doesn't matter if the word that somebody uses in one part of a company is totally different than another part. The system is built to deal with those sort of things, and it also can learn from those sort of things. So it's an extraordinarily robust tool for people that spend a lot of time simply trying to find things that are already within their system. Both Leo and Solace have some SaaS applications, as well as some of the consulting applications that are within Solace. And we think that some of the types of companies that we can serve run the gamut from junior miners all the way up to your largest mining companies out there. And two of the products that we have been marketing recently are Target and Driver. And those start to really get into using the software that we've used. Target is effectively a 2D map, and we can do jurisdictional or countrywide surveys using, be it publicly available, or if it's a private institution that has information, we can use whatever is out there. And the end result is that we take all of these different data points to help find areas that you should really think about doing some more exploration to find whatever the underlying commodity is that you're looking for. And we also, though, are able to look at all commodities. If you bring in a gold expert, that gold expert may overlook the fact that there is something else that is worthwhile where that particular expert is looking. So we think that this is a tool that can really help geologists cut down on some of the things that make them a little bit less useful than they otherwise would be. Driver is effectively using some of that same technology and going subsurface. And what that allows you to do is, using some of the same processes we have, you can do extraordinarily robust imagery to understand what sort of different elements you have in your mine, so that you can avoid penalty minerals. If there happened to be arsenic in a gold mine and you didn't really know what the zonation of that was, this would be an excellent way to find out where it is before you even get into production, which could save untold millions of dollars. Similarly, it can also allow you to optimize for the good things and optimize your mine program. And again, this is looking at multiple elements, and it is also able to look at it from basically many different angles, sort of like an MRI machine can slice and dice things. Both of these are products that we have been recently pushing and launching, and have engaged customers literally around the world. Moving into our natural hazards, the underlying reasons why geology makes a lot of sense for our application are basically the same when it comes to natural hazards. A lot of the outputs are going to be using maps, and instead of basically dealing with trying to find rocks under the earth, we're concerned about rocks falling down hills or other sort of things like that. So we first developed our landslide application map, and that actually won an award. There's a EU mandate called Inspire, and last year we won an award for our application using their standards. We have recently developed a flood application and are working on a wildfire application. I'm going to actually do a quick demo of our sea to sky highway because I think it's very good at helping to understand what it is we're actually doing. So what we're looking at right now is a map of British Columbia and the sea to sky highway. The different colors represent different levels of risk. And it's worth understanding, you can see over here, there's 24-hour forecasts. So this is taking into account the fact that, rain impacts things and weather is not static. If there's been extended periods of rain, you're more likely to have a landslide than if there had not been. The system also is ultimately updated for things like if there have been forestry activities or anything like that. So what this allows you to do though is as I zoom around here, I can see there's kind of different colors. The purple ones are the ones that we want to be concerned with. And it's enough to see that this could potentially be a problem, but why don't we actually see what our system tells us? And if I click on this, you can see here that this matches on a number of attributes, and you can scroll through and there's a whole bunch of different things, but the kind of underlying issue is that this is a 100% match for the model. You are able to click through and actually see the underlying models. So if you're a scientist who really wants to boil down and understand what's going on, you can do that. If you are a emergency manager and you just are more concerned with the fact that it's been raining and all of a sudden I need to do something or go out and check this, that is good enough. We've taken it a bit further though, in that if there is a risk of a landslide, well, we'd like to know what actually happens if there's a landslide. So we can click on this here to see what happens to our polygon. And you can see this is a problem. This looks to have gone over poor, I think it's called Cooper Drive there. That obviously is a problem, and if emergency managers know that there's a great chance that this could happen due to some sort of rainfall event or whatever may have happened, they may want to shut the road. So we think that this product has a lot of applicability for emergency managers, as well as infrastructure companies, and ultimately we think the biggest component of that market is insurance companies and cat risk modelers and other people within that area. So we are very excited to be rolling that out. And in fact, the sea to sky highway that hazard map that I just demonstrated, we yesterday announced that we are making that available. So I would encourage anybody who is interested to look it up and take a free trial around. You'll have to log in, but it's free for right now. We have had a number of different kinds of companies use our services thus far, and certainly are pushing to engage with more. But some of the names here are Oz Minerals, a large mining firm out of Australia. They actually reached out to us, having heard about our expertise within the domain. Gigametals was an early customer of ours that we did a target project for. Casba similarly was an early customer of ours. First Mining Gold, we recently did a project with them that was announced, I believe, at PDAC. And then our largest contract to date was with Natural Resources of Canada. And that one is for a flood map inventory of the whole nation. And we certainly hope that once we've done that and standardized everything, much like I spoke about our professional services leading into using some of our software, if they've got all this data ready to go, we sure hope we can convince them that it's time to reason with it. The US just recently updated their FEMA flood maps, and that's caused quite a stir down there. So we're hoping to have some similar events with ourselves. I mentioned that our software is industry agnostic. There are certainly industries and areas within industries that it likely doesn't make as much sense, much like we think ML doesn't quite solve everything everywhere. But areas that we are very interested in pursuing partnerships and seeing if there are things that we could do are healthcare, agriculture, finance, which in some ways can kind of lump in with some of the agriculture things we're thinking about, real estate, and then I had already mentioned insurance. To be clear, we're not currently doing anything in these areas, but we are actively seeking partners to help expand into those areas. Lastly, I'll kind of wrap it up with, we are a company that has been at this for a couple of years now, so we've got our technology ready to go and have started robustly advertising it. We have validated in two specific sectors right now, in mineral exploration and natural hazards, that we are able to tackle very complicated domains and provide results that people are interested in. And those results are explained in plain language. And then we have the benefit of having some of the leading experts working with us, in addition to our founders. Our chairman used to be the head of AI at the University of British Columbia. And then in terms of where we're looking to move things, we're looking to further develop out our software and professional services to continue to grow revenue. And then ideally focus on partnerships to help leverage the technology we've already built so that we can extend into new verticals. This is our team. This includes a number of our advisors as well as our members of the board of directors. But we've got a well-rounded team. And lastly, I'll just end it with some of the relevant statistics. I have not checked our stock as of closing today, but as of yesterday, it closed at 6.5 cents, leaving us with a market cap of just under 3 million. As of the end of last quarter, being Q1, March 31, we had a little bit over $3 million on the balance sheet, no debt, and we had been burning approximately $200,000 a month. Obviously, we expect to drive revenue, which will reduce that burn dollar for dollar. In terms of our inside ownership, we've got just short of 9% owned by insiders, of which I'm a healthy portion myself. And with that, I will kick it back to Corey to see whatever questions are out there or any thoughts.
Thank you, Scott. I remind our listeners that they can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A function. Our first question is, what is the revenue percentage breakdown between some of our private and public company clients?
So we're certainly early stage when it comes to revenue, but right now, this year, the Natural Resource Canada contract is far and away our largest, and I'm doing this kind of back of the envelope. I would say that's about 85% of this year's revenue, with the rest being private.
Very good. Our next question asks if you could expand a little more on the Alino relationship recently announced.
Yeah, I'm happy to. That one, there was a pizza place I used to go to as a child that had their box always said the best recommendation you can make is to suggest a friend come here. And that is one where Oz Minerals actually introduced us to them as experts in terms of what we were doing in the mineral area. So that was certainly a nice introduction to them to make, and they are going to be reselling our products in primarily Australia and New Zealand. We announced that, I believe that was last week or the week prior. So that is a very fresh initiative, and we are certainly hopeful that things will come of that. Australia is probably one of the leading areas when it comes to embracing technology in the mining sector. So that certainly is an area we hope to expand.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question asks, is there any revenue expectations out of the Sea to Sky relationship? And if you could elaborate a little bit about how that contract came to fruition.
So the Sea to Sky is a SaaS-based, basically business to business or business to consumer facing application. So that was developed, one of our employees graduated from Simon Fraser University, and we have a strong relationship with them. So that was done with a little bit of help with them, but the use case for it is basically we are going to hopefully sign up people on a monthly basis that work within engineering firms and other firms that will care about this sort of stuff to just dramatically cut down on their workload. So there's ideally going to be hundreds of small contracts related to it.
Excellent, thank you. Our last question asks if there has been any support from key investors like Pala or the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund in trying to secure contracts for us.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly there could always be more, of course, but we have been fortunate to have shareholders that are active and helpful. So Paula is, I don't remember how much they own, but they are a part owner of Giga Metals as well as Casbah. And so that was certainly instrumental in helping to get some of those early contracts going. And we have pretty open communication with them, so they are aware of what we're doing, and I would say are very supportive of what we're doing. And we are certainly trying to leverage any of their portfolio companies that are in a place where they need any of our services. With Abu Dhabi, we have leveraged that a little bit less at this point, but are looking to see if we can in the future. That is largely related to healthcare, and we are looking to reinvigorate some conversations around that. And then there are a number of other shareholders that are extraordinarily helpful as well. So we're certainly fortunate from that perspective.
Great, thank you. Another question asks, outside of Canada, are there any other public companies you're working with?
On a contractual basis, none at this point, but we have been having conversations on the insurance side. I would say a good amount of them are, almost all of them are North American, but a good amount of those are US based. Some of the mining companies we've spoken to are, I don't claim to know exactly where their headquarters are, but Casbah is based in Morocco in terms of their operations. Giga has a lot of stuff going on in Brazil. We are looking at potentially trying to win some work in Papua New Guinea. So there's companies that we've worked with around the world, as well as Canada.
Excellent, thank you. I remind our listeners that they can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A function, or if you're dialed in by phone, you can email us at info@burgessadvisory.com. All right, Scott, well, it looks like we have no further questions. So on that note, I will hand it over to you for any sort of closing remarks you may have.
I guess I'd just like to thank everyone for their questions, their interest. We certainly, if anybody wants to become a shareholder and introduce us to anybody they know, we would welcome that. But in all seriousness, any questions, please feel free to reach out to us or to reach out to Corey and Babak at Virtus. We're pretty excited about what we're doing here and hope to have some good things happen in the next couple of months.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott.
All right, thank you.